This video is brought to you by Devout Decals, makers of reusable Catholic art for your home altar, your bedroom, and your home classroom.
We have a bombshell report out of the Lepanto Institute, just in time for the most notorious second collection of the year. Every year at this time, the dioceses in the United States ask the parishes to offer a second collection for the Catholic Campaign for Human Development. And every year, it seems, the Lepanto Institute comes out and reminds us of the depths of the wickedness that this collection goes to fund. This year is a little different. Lepanto certainly did issue their report, but this time they went back as far as 2004 to show the real size and scope of the problem, and the results are staggering, to say the least. Let's go right into the report itself before I show you a couple of clips of an interview that Michael Hitchborn of the Lepanto Institute gave to a Catholic show on YouTube just a couple of days ago on this very report. And I want you to remember that as you go to Mass this weekend, so you don't find yourself putting money in that basket. From this report, which I got directly from Mr. Hitchborn directly, we get this from its introduction section as a summary of the problem. Quote, "The following report on organizations receiving funding from the Catholic Campaign for Human Development for fiscal year 2020 to 2021 provides a list of clickable reports. Each of the organizations profiled received a grant from the Catholic Campaign for Human Development, according to the latest reported list from the United States Conference of Catholic Bishops. Next to the named organization is the amount it received from the CCHD for that year, followed by the diocese that approved the grant. The final three columns on the report chart indicate whether the violations discovered were direct, coalition, or leadership. A direct violation is one where the organization itself was found to be the principal actor in the offense. A coalition violation is one where the organization was found to be a member of a coalition which was either acting or had taken a formal position in direct opposition to Catholic moral or social teaching. A leadership violation is one where the leadership of the organization, be it a board member, executive director, or key staff person, had acted or proposed ideologies in direct violation of Catholic moral or social teaching. The types of violations are clearly marked as follows. You have the Moloch ritual, the James Martin interest group, the chemical barriers to founding a family, and the ideology of Karl Marx and paganism, end quote. Serious stuff, but you're probably not surprised, except maybe by that last category. Yes, some of these organizations are explicitly pagan in origin and purpose, with mission statements overtly hostile to Christ. And we as Catholics are funding them because either the bishops agree with the work they do or because the bishops are too cowardly to take a hard stand against this kind of evil. Let's dive a little deeper. What is the financial scope of the problem? From the report, quote, "Of the 214 organizations receiving grants from the CCHD in 2020 to 2021, 66 of those organizations are ineligible for Catholic funds, which is 30.8%. Those 66 organizations receive funding from 46 of the 196 dioceses of the United States. Some other figures of note. Of the 11,249,000 distributed by the CCHD in fiscal year 2020 to 2021, 3.4 million went to organizations acting against Holy Mother Church, which is 30.4% of the grant total. Since 2004, the organizations identified in this report have collectively received 16,633,000 in grants from the CCHD. The average grant to an offending organization is $51,969. 47 out of the 66 organizations profiled in the report are in direct violation of Catholic moral or social teaching. That's 71% of all offending organizations, end quote. So, to be clear, most of the organizations in violation of the terms of the CCHD grants are directly violating the terms of the grant agreement, directly violating it, not just because of association, and they keep getting the grants they receive. Why? Because that agreement and the rules that govern it had to be the product of the USCCB, and the local bishops make a lot of the decisions, and the CCHD itself probably doesn't agree with its own rules anyway. Given that the bishops have amply demonstrated that they simply don't care enough to do anything about this problem, the Catholic Campaign for Human Development keeps getting away with giving money to adversaries of Christ and his church. But let's dig a little deeper into the money topic. The following clip comes from the YouTube channel Catholic Drive Time, and they recently had Michael Hitchborn on to talk about this report. I have the full interview linked in the pinned comment, which will take you to the personal channel of one of the hosts of Catholic Drive Time, and you should go watch it before going to Mass on Sunday. And I also have a link to the Catholic Drive Time channel also in the pinned comment. But that interview is very eye-opening. And thanks to the guys at the Catholic Drive Time for letting me use this clip.
Which brings me to the next question. How much money has the CCHD lost as a result to your efforts to raise awareness of these troubling issues?
Well, that's difficult to tell because as a religious institution, the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops is not required to file a tax form 990. Mm-hmm. They do file an annual report where we can see how they break down their budget, but the budget doesn't reflect what they're getting in terms of collections for each of the individual collections. So we don't know what kind of a hit CCHD has taken. The USCCB has maintained roughly the same budget for the last 50 years. Mm-hmm. But I don't know in terms of real numbers what the collection dip has been for the CCHD.
Let me ask you a quick follow-up question on that then. So is it possible to track how much money they're granting every year to see if that number has fluctuated? Like, oh, we were used to give out more money, but now we're giving out less, or we give out more now versus less earlier? Is there any way to look at it from that perspective?
I've looked at those numbers, and they tend to be in the same ballpark. It's actually increased slightly over the years, but it does fluctuate between 9 or 10 million on the low end to about 14 million on the high end.
You know, I was listening to some of your other interviews and some of the looking at your reports, and it blew my mind how much money was given to these organizations. You said about 30% of the organizations were not good, and at least explicitly not good. And the thing was, I used to work for a Catholic charity, which would give out money to different Catholic organizations. And a grant of like $2,000 was like, okay, that's a significant amount. A grant of $10,000 was huge. But these organizations were receiving at the low end 50 grand. Could you talk a little bit about how much money these individual organizations were receiving, and overall how much money was given to these particular organizations?
Sure. A lot of these organizations have been getting money for well over 2 decades. And what we found is that as they've been collecting that money, we tallied up all of the money that all of these 66 grantees have received since 2004, because that's as far back as the CCHD's grants lists go. Collectively, they have all received $16.6 million since 2004. That's a whole lot of money. Most of these organizations we've busted before. You know, we've found them promoting bad things and been involved in bad things, and CCHD doesn't seem to give a rip about what we find. They just turn around and say, oh, the Lepanto Institute, they're just, they overstate things and they misconstrue or take things out of context.
Now, $16 million may not sound like a huge amount of money over 66 organizations in 16 years, but these organizations, those grants, come from the CCHD are essential to their survival. That is, that 30% pretty consistently of the money they disperse every year to organizations for the purported aim of promoting the Church's social mission of mercy in the world. If these evil organizations lost that money permanently, they'd be left in a very tight spot, at least until the government funding came in to replace it. And if that were to happen, at least our culpability as Catholics for funding it directly out of the collection would be gone. But that's the thing about these kinds of organizations. They promote great evil in the world, and they do so using federal grants to do it as well, which means that we are all complicit through our taxes in the great evils that cry out to heaven for justice. Giving to this collection in this coming Sunday in your diocese is a voluntary act and greatly increases your culpability before God, whereas taxation is not voluntary, especially on policies that somehow manage to survive regardless of which party is running things in the imperial capital. For some of these things, it doesn't seem to make much of a difference, and this seems to be one of them. Now, you might be asking yourself a basic, rather obvious question at this point. What about the U.S. bishops? How have they responded? In general, if any of them respond positively at all, it's very quietly, which is unfortunate. We rarely, if ever, see even the Stricklands or other of the better bishops in America responding in public. I'll let Michael Hitchborn explain this here in another clip from that interview.
Have you heard anything positive from any bishop? Has any bishop said, oh, because of your reports, I'm going to pull funding from CCHD, my diocese won't participate? Or the individual priest saying, you know, despite the fact that my diocese is taking up the collections, I won't be doing this collection in my diocese?
Yes, and it's all done quietly. I've had several bishops tell me that they're no longer taking up the collection, but they won't make a public announcement. And I've had several priests do the same thing.
How much pressure do these bishops receive from superior bishops or from the body as the USCCB body as a whole if they don't take up the collection, do you think?
I don't know how much pressure they get, but I can tell you that their reluctance to say anything publicly seems to indicate that there is an awful lot of pressure that comes down on them, especially since they come out and say things that are kind of unpopular on other topics.
And that's why I'm making noise about this now. Today is Friday, November 18th, 1 week until Thanksgiving. And on Sunday, just a paltry 5 days before Thanksgiving, your parish will be taking up a collection for the Catholic Campaign for Human Development, unless your parish has a policy explicitly of not passing out the basket for that collection. Maybe the funniest response to the CCHD collection I've ever seen came from an FSSP parish in my state, where the bishop in question was very much pro-CCHD, but the priest felt so inclined to warn people about what they were being asked to support and fund directly that during his sermon before the collection, the priest flat out said that there would be a second collection that day and that it would go for a fund that gives money to enemies of Christ and his church. He said that explicitly, that they were being asked to give money to fund work that goes explicitly against the church on social and moral issues. He went on and made it pretty clear that he had to have the collection at the parish, but he warned everyone what it was being used for. The basket went out and came back empty. I'm asking you, please, don't put anything in that basket this Sunday. That is, if that is second collection, is for that, because some places have alternative second collections now, which is good. But the second collection at your parish this weekend, unless they've explicitly announced some other second collection, if it's for the Catholic Campaign for Human Development, please don't do it. If your priest tells you that it's for the CCHD, please don't put anything in that basket. Give the money to Project Gabriel if you have one in your diocese, or give it to a food pantry, or Toys for Tots, or anything else, but please, not to the Catholic Campaign for Human Development. You may as well just hand the money directly to the enemies of the church if you're going to give it to the CCHD, because that's where there's a good chance that of the $10 you put in that basket, 3 is going to something grotesque. Thanks again to the gentleman at Catholic Drive Time for letting me use those clips. I highly recommend watching the full clip and watching Catholic Drive Time during their live morning live stream, which happens at 6 a.m. Central Standard Time, Monday through Friday, here on YouTube or on the Guadalupe Radio Network. Links to both the Catholic Drive Time YouTube channel and the host Joe McClain's channel are in the pinned comment. And if you look around their archives on either of their pages, you will probably find it when they had me on a few months ago. So, but the host channel is where you'll find the full interview with Michael Hitchborn. And they also have an interview with the author of a book about Bella Dodd, proving that she was in fact very real, and that her claims were in fact very real. And that interview is on the Catholic Drive Time channel. So I'd recommend you go check out both channels. Now, what do you think about this Catholic Campaign for Human Development topic, though? Is your parish having the CCHD collection this Sunday? Did your parish already have the collection early? Because some parishes do that. Is your bishop one of the cheerleaders for the CCHD? I'm very curious about that, because one of the bishops in my state apparently is, which is unfortunate. But I'm curious how you will handle this when that basket comes in front of you. So let me know in the comments, please. Like and subscribe if you haven't. It really does help. Sharing this on social media helps a lot as well. As always, pray for the church. I'm Anthony Stine. Ave Maria.